Okay, hello VC, Uncle Roddus here again with another vinyl video update. You'll notice I'm actually sitting in a different place today. Now, over the week or weekend, something happened to one of my speakers. Actually, I noticed it making a bit of a funny noise playing a record, and I discovered one of my speaker cones had sort of seized itself up or something. I'm not sure exactly. So anyway, I had to take it into the shop and I got it in there fairly quickly. Hopefully it's a warranty issue because the speakers aren't that old. So managed to finish it up working a little bit earlier yesterday. Just got a bunch of wee sort of jobs running around doing this, that and the other thing. So buggered off into town late yesterday afternoon to drop the speaker in, and still had enough time to go to the record shop, which is not a good thing really, is it? So went down to my local record shop and was browsing. Mainly hit the New Zealand music bins first up because I'm still looking for a bunch of New Zealand music that I'm hoping is going to turn up in the bins over time. And so I went through those, had a look, and managed to pick out a few albums. One that I'd seen there the other week when I was in there, and some other new ones that had come in that looked quite interesting. Excuse me again. I don't want that overwhelming us. So picked out 3 or 4 records, and then was looking through a whole bunch of bins that they had set up on a table, and I think something along the lines of they've scored a rather large collection of vinyl off somebody, and whether it's an estate, although looking at the vinyl it's probably someone a bit younger, and so I was thumbing through that. Most of it didn't really interest me, but there were several records in there that I could have grabbed, but I did found two quite interesting records that were in that bin. And then I was looking in the recent arrivals bin, which I always do, and again, there's some New Zealand music that gets put in there, as well as lots of other interesting stuff. It's usually the most interesting bin in the shop, to be honest, but usually the most expensive as well. Anyway, so I'll get straight into these ones. So looking through the bins, the first one, actually the second one I found, but the first one I'm going to show is this one, Pearls Before Swine. This is their first album from about 1967, One Nation Underground, and I wasn't really familiar with their music. I was familiar with who they were and where they were from and what time period they were in, but so I had a listen to these. I think they are going to need a little more attention. They didn't grip me straight away. The vocals, I think they're going to take a bit of getting used to. I mean, it doesn't sound like a great singer to me, but the music's pretty cool. It's a little bit different. I guess people who are into that band Love, which I'm not into at all, would probably get into this sort of thing. So the first album is, interestingly enough, when I was looking up on Discogs to add it to my collection, so it says on the back it's printed in the USA, and this was actually on ESP disc, their first album. But interestingly enough, there's a sticker at the top here. I'm not sure if you can see that, just up there. It says manufactured in Australia, Electric Records, and it's got its own little number, and then it's got real. Now, manufactured, and yet on the back it says printed in the USA, in the ESP discs, and then the stick on the actual record itself. You probably don't need to take it out of the bag. So there's the Real Records label, and I suspect that's been stuck on. And I'll tell you why I suspect that, because the thing's on the wrong side. So I went to play side 1 and ended up with all the tracks on side 2 playing. So that was quite interesting. And then I think this was their 4th album from sort of 1970 or 71. So this is the Use of Ashes, Pearls Before Swine. I think I've listened to a bit of this. I've got that many records, I haven't had a chance to get through them all yet. So need to do some time with that. So I picked out some records out of the New Zealand music bin. Now, the first one I'd seen there in my previous trip, and I was nearly going to buy it, but I had all these other records in my hand, so I thought, no, I better leave that, but it was still there when I got back. Now, the man here is called Matthew Brown, at play with the spaces. Now, this is on Ode Records. Ode Records was a New Zealand record company set up in the late 60s, originally released a whole bunch of sort of pop singles and things like that. Later on, they got into albums, and they did a lot of jazzy stuff, I think, from what I've seen. They haven't got a huge catalogue, and they went for, this was 1983, and they were still going for a bit longer than then. I don't think they're around nowadays. Anyway, this guy is solo piano. The piano was set up in a theatre with some microphones, the stereo mic'd it, and he went through and played a bunch of, he says they were compositions, but they improvised over them, or used them as a base for improvisation. And this is what we're listening to here in the background. It's a lovely, beautiful album, some nice playing, really good condition, reasonably cheap price, and like Ode Records, I'm quite interested in looking out for more of their stuff, especially the jazz stuff that they did in New Zealand jazz. The Mike Knock album that I showed recently was on Ode Records as well, so that was cool. And speaking of Ode, this one here, now this isn't actually jazz, but I picked this one up. This is a little bit later. This was 1986. It's very processed sounding. It's got that really 80s, it's pop music as such. It's got that really 80s processed synth drum kind of beat to it that drives the songs along. Last Man Down is the name of the band. This Sporting Life is the name of the album. And the guy Ross Mullins, whose name was familiar to me. This is a bit of a blind buy, but it turned out I wasn't familiar with the music, but this is his second album, and the first album was called Statehouse Kid. And when I looked on Discogs and I saw that album, that was instantly familiar to me, possibly because I'd seen it a lot around in the shops at the time, or maybe I'd even heard some of it, I don't know. But anyway, listening to this, the first thing I get is like, yeah, I get that really kind of cheesy 80s kind of synth driven drum machine beat kind of to it, and it's like, ooh, but and it's, there's some vocals on it, but sort of underpinning it all is some really quite interesting sounds, and if you can get through that kind of 80s thing and get into the stuff that's happening in the background a bit more, well, in the background, but in support of it, it's actually not too bad. Needs a wee bit more attention. I haven't really sat down, but as I was doing some stuff as I was listening to it, and I was noticing that, yeah, there is some cool stuff happening there. This one here is another one that was unfamiliar to me, but I looked at it and I looked at the lineup. It's quite a big band. This is from 1982, Unsung Music, New Zealand, in Auckland. I looked at the lineup. There's something like nearly 10 musicians credited on here, and I don't know whether they're all playing on this all at once. But you got your saxophone, synthesizers, bass, guitars, trumpets, drums and percussion, and I'm thinking, this looks quite interesting, and I'm thinking maybe this is something along the lines of 6 Volts or Primitive Art Group, and that covers kind of suggests that maybe as well. Turns out that I wasn't completely wrong. It's a reggae-based poppy sort of, there are vocals and pop, there are, songs. There's actually, it's not long improvised pieces or long songs. There's 4 or 5 songs on each side, but and it's quite nice. But but it definitely has got that little offbeat jazzy type thing, like the 6 Volts and the Primitive Art Group, but not quite so wild. So yeah, it was a good find, and I'm quite impressed, and I think it will grow on me, that album. And then the next one I picked up again is a little bit unknown to me. This is practically brand new, actually. It's in almost mint condition. I got it for $10, and this is a Christchurch Banned from 1983. This was recorded at Night Shift Studios. The word is the name of the band, and that's the name of the EP as well, I think, by the looks of it, because there's no other thing. 6 songs, it's a 33 RPM EP. It's got a real Flying Nun feel to it from that era. Certainly, yeah, it certainly shows its age in that, but in saying that, it's not bad, it's pretty good, what I've heard of it so far. But the reason I actually picked it up more than anything is it's actually on this Unwunked, which is a German label who have been specialising in, particularly in New Zealand, quite obscure New Zealand music. They've released a whole lot of, Chris Walker showed a whole lot of Builders and Build Irene records that they'd released, and I had a look on their Discogs site. This is number 16, so I think about halfway down their catalogue at that stage, from 2013. I think, doesn't tell me on there, but I think I found on Discogs. So yeah, from Christchurch, my hometown. So that's another interesting score. So all in all, for a lot of blind buys, I haven't actually done too badly. So the next one, I went to. So with those in hand, or those New Zealand records that are under my arm, thinking, right, I really should call it quits here and get the hell out of here before I, find too much. But as per usual, I always go and stop at the new releases bins, which is, like I say, where they find the most expensive but the best albums. And lo and behold, what I find is this, the Rip Shit or Bust EP from 1983 on Ripper Records. And I had a copy of this many years ago, and I'm rapt to have a copy again. And since I started collecting vinyl, I have been keeping an eye out, or hopefully for this. I did actually see it in a shop when I first started buying vinyl, and I was like, I was balking at the prices and thinking, oh really, and I did pay a fair whack for this. I mean, it's only a 6-song EP, and I paid $50 for it, but it's bloody worth it. This is some New Zealand classics here, and of course it's got the infamous Rena's Piss Flaps. I don't know if you can see that there by the spelling mistakes. And also the song before that is The Androids Getting Jumpy, which is another fantastic song, which I absolutely love. It still sounds as good as it did when I was 18. And unfortunately for my wallet, this was sitting in the bin not far away from the Rip Shit or Bust EP. This is another EP. For those who are not familiar, this is a rather famous, very early Flying Nun EP. It's a double 45 EP with 4 bands, 1 band per side. The Chills leading off, the Verlaines on the 4th side, and the Sneaky Feelings and the Stones in the middle. So this is an original. It's not the reissue that was, I understand, came out a couple of years ago, which is also sold out and pretty hard to get now. But this is an original, and I paid. So this is DUN 1, which actually means Dunedin, because it's called the Dunedin EP or the Dunedin Double. I don't think that's an official name. I think that's its unofficial name. But rapt to have this. I guess I had seen it in the shops before, and I again was like, But since I've got into this collecting New Zealand music, and especially some of the older, rarer stuff, I thought, bugger it. So yeah, that really put a big hole in my wallet. So that's pretty much what I grabbed from the shop yesterday. And then just to finish off, I've got a couple of releases that I picked up online and arrived in the mail. These are new vinyl. This is Glass Vaults. The album's called Sojourn. This is kind of a psychedelic-y type indie pop. Some pretty interesting sound going, experimental sounds going on top as well. So sort of through Flying Out Records. Well, Flying Out says manufactured and distributed by Flying Out. Flying Out is actually an online record shop. As far as I'm aware, it's only online. It doesn't have a physical shop, but it's based in Auckland. I actually brought this through their Bandcamp site, and this is a very limited edition pink vinyl version of this record. I think there's only 20 copies available in this pink. I think there are many more copies of the black version available, certainly on the Flying Out website. That's not bad. I've still got to get used to that one, familiar with that one a bit more. And finally, another one that I bought, I think I bought this through Flying Out as well. Now this was a band that I came across via their Bandcamp's page, and I had a look at them and I listened to them, and they're from my hometown of Christchurch, and they are called Dopra, like Oprah. This is called the Wasting album. I think it's their first. I think they had an EP or two out, and then they've, as you do, and then released this in 2015. Yeah, had a listen to it on their Bandcamp, quite enjoyed it, had listened to it a few more times and decided I'd get a copy of it. They actually played a concert here with another band, and they didn't, unfortunately I didn't manage to get into town to see it, but some of these concerts, especially they've been at one of the venues, have been midweek concerts and they don't start till 9 o'clock, and to get into town, go to a concert, finishing God knows what hour of the night, and then coming home again and going to work the next morning get a bit much for this old fella. So this is kind of a dream pop sort of thing, and you wouldn't be hard to sort of give it a reference with Portishead, but with not quite so much trippy sort of to it. But yeah, lovely album, definitely worth having. Probably fairly limited edition, I would imagine, on Arch Hill Records here in New Zealand, who put out some pretty good music. So some pretty good New Zealand scores to finish off New Zealand Music Month, and some interesting scores. So that's me for another session, another video I should say. Hope you're well. I've got some more. I've got 2 more New Zealand music records in the post, which have taken quite a long time to get here, which is a bit sad, considering they don't have to come very far. But the Flying Out site has some good music, and they're reasonably priced, and they don't charge extra. Well, they don't charge. The prices are, no, they don't charge directly for postage, but their prices can be a couple of dollars dearer kind of to compensate, but they're actually reasonably priced most of the time. But their delivery service is very slow, and I don't know why, because most of the stuff I get from New Zealand can get to me in about 2 days, and they seem to take 7 to 10 days, and I really don't know why that is, even after they've notified me that they've sent the vinyl, which they don't always do. But they should be here, and then I've got some other interesting double LPs which will be on the way, which I'll show in my next video, which should be here in the next week to 2 weeks. I am heading to Queenstown for a Cromwell in Queenstown for the weekend. It's Queen's birthday weekend coming up here this weekend, so I'm going to go into Queenstown and check out the record shop there. There was a CD shop in Queenstown that I have frequented in the past, and maybe they've got some vinyl now. Hopefully they have, so I can go and have a look at that. Anyway, keep well. See you again next time.